UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Welcome to Franchise Fatigue, the little podcast on the United Federation of Podcast Network, where your hosts, Brandon-Shea and Zach Moore, go over all the films and their sequels and remakes in a movie franchise for you. And we talk about them all one at a time. And tonight, you thought you knew who we were, you thought we were bad, you thought we were evil, but we're here to show you that we can be good as well. We're here to protect you and save you, because we love you all, listeners. Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Have you seen this boy?
So who's that little girl? I recognized her.
That is Nikki Cox. She played the alien in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 2 Pen Pals.
No way.
That Data saves. That's correct. And many fan theories postulate that she is Catherine Brewster from Terminator 3 and 4. So,
Nikki Cox?
Yeah, well, the
or
child...
that girl. Oh, the child.
The actress, Nikki Cox, right?
Yep.
The character she is playing, when people try to connect all the dots for the overall franchise, people are like, oh man, that was Catherine Brewster. They were going to hang out in the basement. Anyway, we'll get to that next week. We're talking about Terminator 2 this week, and very exciting to do so, because Terminator 2 is one of the movies I've probably seen the most in my life, just over and over and over. And
over and over and over. I just threw it on because I've got the DVD edition, and it looked like ass. So I saw it was on Netflix, and I'm like, oh, let me just see how it looks in Blu-ray. And I just went to this thing, and it went from one scene to the other because it's the theatrical cut on Netflix, right? And I'm like, all the cues, I'm like, I had it almost memorized. I'm like, I know what's coming up next, and then that sound happened, and then that cue happened, and then that music happened, and I'm like, yep, I've seen this movie way too many times in my life.
So we'll get into all the different, versions or deleted scenes and other things like that, because there's two main versions of Terminator 2. There's the theatrical cut, and I believe it's called the Special Edition.
Yeah.
It's also
Special
called the
edition.
Extended Edition. I've seen it labeled many things, and because it's come out many times in a home video with these labels, but the Special Edition, I think, is the one I'm most familiar with that label. And when you have a choice, Brandon, like, which one do you put on to watch?
Okay, so I don't know if we want to save it for the discussion later, but, we could talk about it right now, too. I personally prefer the theatrical cut overall, but there's some stuff in the extended edition, special edition, that I really do like and think should have been in the theatrical cut. And the primary scene that I think should have been is near the end when the T-1000 is degrading.
Glitching. Yeah.
That stuff I think should have been in, because the first time I watched it, I remember how confused I was when the two Sarah Connors appeared right at the end. And in that special edition, he looks down and sees the feet kind of melting into the ground.
Well, it also explains the plot hole, which is like, why does he want to have her call to John at the end? It's because he's glitching; he's not operating correctly. So I agree, and I prefer the special edition, the extended cut, because I don't think anything in that takes away from the overall whole. But we'll put a pin in that. We'll pick it back up when we get into discussion proper. But let's get into our trivia for Terminator 2: Judgment Day. So Terminator 1 had a budget of $6.4 million, had a worldwide box office of $78 million. So that is a great return on investment for Terminator 1. Very low budget film, very high ROI, as they say in the business world. But Terminator 2 had a budget of $102 million, which at the time was the most expensive movie ever made. But that money was well spent because it had a worldwide box office of $520 million. So we went from, 80s horror, sci-fi, mashup, slasher, low-budget flick to one of the biggest blockbusters of all time. So that in and of itself is quite an achievement. Both written and directed by James Cameron. Now, have you seen the teaser trailer for Terminator 2, Brendan?
Is that the one where it's just Arnold and he's like, I swear I will not kill anybody?
No, that is not that one. It's the one where, it's filmed specifically to be a teaser trailer. It's the one in the Terminator factory where you see the T-800 being built, and then they put the skin on Arnold. Have you seen this?
Oh, probably.
This is, in my opinion, and a lot of people think this, one of the best, if not the best, teaser trailers of all time. So James Cameron had Stan Winston direct this, and it had a budget on its own of $150,000. So Stan Winston, who was behind the Terminator effects in the franchise, he created a kind of a futuristic assembly line where you could see how the Terminator is being built. So it kind of explains away, although if you're paying attention in the first movie, you would think, oh, there's, Model 101, T100, whatever. That goes without saying, but they do go out of their way to explain it in all these movies, how the Arnold model is the 101. That's why you see his face all the time. But you see this assembly line, and you see it go into this, skin box, that compresses, then it opens back up, and then the T-100 endoskeleton is covered up with Arnold, and then he opens up his eyes, and his eyes turn red, and it says T2, and they use, of course, the famous line from T1, I'll be back, and that is one of the best teaser trailers of all time, and I miss teaser trailers like this where specific things were shot just for the trailer to kind of like, this is the function of this, and we're not just taking a random scene from the movie. So if anybody out there hasn't seen it, it's on the Blu-rays, the special features, it's on the internet. I recommend you go check it out.
Is it better than the trailer for Star Trek 3?
What is the trailer for Star Trek 3 you're referring to?
Where they show the Enterprise blowing up in the trailer?
Well, that's a problem. I mean, in general with trailers and specifically the Terminator franchise.
Yeah, whoa, we got to put a pin in that until we get to number 5. Let's just put a pin in that discussion right now until we get to number 5.
But in 2, 4, and 5, major reveals are revealed in these trailers. Like, the people making the trailers are not on the same page as the people making the film. And I do want to talk about that briefly for T2 when we talk about the overall story. But
okay.
Moving on. This is the only Terminator film nominated for an Oscar. It won 4 out of the 6 it was nominated for. Although James Cameron really pushed for Lyndall Hamilton to be nominated for an Oscar because he was so impressed with her performance.
Oh, man, she should have been. That scene when the video footage of her, when they're watching her talk to Soberman there, and she's like so quiet, and then she just is yelling at him and whatnot. Oh man, she's amazing in that.
Oh, she's great throughout the whole film, and we'll talk about it. But also, James Cameron, he was probably also pushing for it because him and her actually got into their relationship during the making of this film. Cameron and Catherine Bigelow, another Hollywood director, were getting divorced at the time. And James Cameron and Lyndall Hamilton were in a relationship throughout the making of this film through the late 90s. They got married in 1997, and they ended up getting divorced a couple of years after that because James Cameron had an affair with another actress that he had met on the set of Titanic, Susie Amos.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Leonardo DiCaprio.
No. No. So anyway, lots of behind-the-scenes drama there with the director and his actresses. And, of course, as we said in the last Terminator trivia, Gale Ann Hurd, the producer of the first Terminator, he was in a relationship with her as well. So, James Cameron, this is how he operates. But anyway,
Catherine Bigelow there, his wife, she did Strange Days, hey?
Yeah, and she also did, was it Zero Dark 30 that won Best Picture instead of Avatar?
Yeah.
That year, so she got her revenge on the Academy Awards stage right there. But we talked about during Jaws: The Revenge, right? That this time it's personal tagline of the trailer. One of the taglines for this movie was "It's nothing personal," kind of playing against the cliche established by Jaws: The Revenge, and then also, hey, it's a machine, so it truly is nothing personal.
This movie's better than Jaws: The Revenge.
Slightly, yes. So the idea of the Cyberdyne systems going after them to prevent the rise of Skynet, that was an idea from the deleted scenes in the first Terminator. That's something they actually talk about, but it was cut from the film, and as I mentioned last time, none of these scenes, there is no special edition or extended edition of the Terminator, so none of these scenes were ever incorporated into the movie, so Cameron kind of took that and made it the nucleus of his story for Terminator 2. Speaking of deleted scenes from the Terminator, the phrase, "there is no fate but what we make for ourselves," is not said in the Terminator. It is actually in the deleted scenes. It's kind of like in 2010, right, where they started out with Dave Bowen. He goes into the obelisk.
My
and
it's
it's full of stars. Yeah, right. That's from the book written by Arthur C. Clarke, but it's not in the movie. And it's one of those things that when you're watching, you just kind of take it for granted, like, oh yeah, of course that was in the first one. No, it was not. So, now this is very interesting, and I kind of want your thoughts on this, Brandon. James Cameron and William Wisher, who co-wrote the film with him, they briefly considered having two T-800s in the film, where you have a good one and a bad one, and it would be Arnold fighting himself. But they eventually settled on going back to the idea that liquid Terminator from the first film that they considered, but the technology wasn't there yet. What do you think about that? Because I definitely think that should have been a Terminator movie at some point. I know they've played with it, like in Genesis, and we'll get there when we get there down the road, but what do you think of if they had done, like, good Arnold versus bad Arnold?
Oh, that would have been interesting. It's tough to say because I'm really happy with what they did. Like, I can't picture this any other way than the liquid metal Terminator, because it creates an adversary for him. Like, to me, it makes so much more sense that they would have something better to send back in time, and the humans were only able to get, a T-800. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like, to me, and somewhere in the back of my mind, that makes a lot of sense to me, that they just sent whoever they could, and that's why they ended up sending a good Arnold back.
Right. Well, I think, and we'll get into it, right? But the T-1000 is the ultimate Terminator. And in my opinion, they've never been able to match that again. They keep inventing these other Terminators. I think, even after this, in a future Terminator film, it would have been a pretty good... Like, how do you get around that you can't top the T-1000? Oh, we'll just have a good Arnold and a bad Arnold. And the uniqueness of that would have definitely... They could have sold that. So anyway, we can talk about that as the franchise goes on and we have other bad Terminators and stuff. But it's interesting that they themselves considered that. Speaking of two of something, Lyndall Hamilton has a twin sister. So they really lucked into that. Leslie Hamilton is her twin sister. They used her in the theatrical cut in the scene where the T-1000 impersonates her. And then also in the special edition, the deleted scenes of when they take the chip out of the T-800, she's the mirror image of Lyndall Hamilton. So... Wow, they just fell into that. Like, actually, like the security guard, for example, that guy, they cast twins intentionally, but they just happened to be that the star, the female lead of their franchise, is a twin sister in a movie where they have to have doubles. I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't have to have doubles, right? They could have used special effects, and it just helped them to create neat angles of the takes, right?
Right. It helped keep that budget down to $102 million. So... speaking of Michael Biehn and the T-1000, he was actually... They were considering casting him as the T-1000 to kind of truly reverse the roles of the first Terminator, like to really blow people's minds. However, they ultimately decided that would be too confusing for the viewers and didn't do that. So once again, Michael Biehn, not having a returning role.
That would have been really interesting.
I agree. That would have been really weird. Like, you played some real mind games with that, but I don't think they should have done it. Like, it's like on paper, it's like oh man, yeah, that'd be cool if they did that. But it's like, look, guys, let's do something else. And like you said, I love how the T-1000 turned out. But that just been weird. Now he does appear in a scene that was not in the theatrical cuts in the extended edition. We can talk about it. But it's interesting that speaking of. Every single, the three main characters from the first Terminator, they all appear in this one in their Terminator 1 costumes at some point. In the surveillance photos from the police station massacre from the Terminator, those are not stills from the film. They actually recreated those pictures for this film. We see Lyndall Hamilton in her waitress outfit from the Terminator when Sarah Connor has her dream about the future. And then, of course, when... Michael Biehn shows up as Kyle Reese again, and one of Sarah's other dreams in the special edition extended cut. He's wearing what he wore in the first Terminator, and spot on job. I think they did a great job replicating all those costumes for this one. So
yeah, they sure did.
Now, some other actors they were talking about for the T-1000 were Billy Idol. James Cameron's original choice was Billy Idol, but ironically, Billy Idol got in a motorcycle accident and was on crutches. So he couldn't do the part of the T-1000. So James Cameron ultimately went with Robert Patrick after he saw him in Die Hard 2. That is what inspired him